Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial in ARK Survival Ascended. Today I'm going to show you exactly step by step how to build this log cabin in ARK. You don't need any mods to build this structure. As you can see, it's using the normal vanilla stone textures, normal wooden textures, and a little bit of the frontier and the steampunk skins from the Bob Talltales DLC. Now I have added some additional details like all the leaves that you can see. That's from JVH Landscaping. That is a mod, but without it, it will still look like a really nice and cozy cabin. If you want to see a more detailed tour of the base first before you decide to build it on your own, check out the full video I've already posted on that. And of course, if you enjoy seeing these types of build tutorials, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate all the support. And then of course, feel free to leave suggestions down below in the comments for future builds you'd like to see. Of course, we're going to start out with our foundations. We want to start right over here by going 6 wide in total. So that's going to be the width of the main building. And we'll bring this out to be 13 long. So we will just want to keep this going until we reach 13. Then, of course, we can bring it across again and connect it back up with each other. So in total, this main shape is going to be 13 by 6. So that should look something like this. And then this is going to be like the front part of the building. We're going to have an entrance there, greenhouse there, and then we're going to have some additions to the back. We'll start right here at the back right away. We want to keep this corner free, and then we want to bring this out by 2, go across to be 4 in total. We can fill this in and then have 2 extra foundations right out there. Then we're going to continue around the back here. We're going to have 2 foundations free. Then again, bring this out by 2 and go 4 wide in total and fill that in as well. So we have 2 little additions here at the back of the building. Then we're going to go around the corner. We'll keep these corner free. Then we want to go out by 2 right here. We want to bring this out to be 7 in total. So just like this. Then we want to make this 2 wide. And then we want to have 2 more going out in front. So 2 over here, 2 over there. And we also want to make sure that we add 1 more here so that this end is also 2 wide. This is going to kind of be the staircase going up to the main entrance. Then over here, we can go out by 1 more. We can go across to be 4 in total. And we can bring this back connecting into the main building. So we kind of want to connect the 2 up like that. And we want to have 2 additional foundations right there on the front. Then we'll continue over here. We'll leave the corner free again. And then we're going to add 6 more foundations right over here. So bringing this out by 6 in total and connecting it up back to the main building. That's going to be the stables area. And then finally here in the middle over here, we want to add a greenhouse. So we're going to go out by 3 foundations, fill this in completely. And then, of course, we can take out our triangles. Now, we're going to count the outside here. We want to have 2 triangles there, 2 over here. And then we should also have the same here at the end. And we can just kind of fill in the rest of the ship. So that's going to be the foundations for the greenhouse. And with this done, it means we can kind of start filling in this entire layout, because that is the entire building that we'll need. All of the foundations. So as long as you can fit this out somewhere, you can build the build in that spot. So we just want to continue filling all of these foundations in so that we have all the support we need and we don't need to worry about anything anymore. And we also now know that we will be able to fit or build wherever we can place down this entire foundation. So just a few more and there we go. So first up, we're going to work here on the stables area and the wall behind it. For the wall, we can just use the large walls and we can go across this section. Just make sure that you go until this point. So this is this wall up to here. And then from this corner, we can also have some beams going across. We'll leave that one open because there's probably going to be a door there. We can have some more beams going across the bottom here, and then also have them along the side here. We can actually use them to divide up these stables that we'll be building. So every 2 foundations, we're going to have some of these dividing lines. Then we'll pick out our stone pillars. We can have them connected here and all the way along the side of this wall. The same here on this corner, so that both of those are connected. So that back wall is what we'll be building our little stables against. We can then take out our wooden pillars, and right here on the front we can add 2 of them on each of these ends, except over here, because of course that will be part of the wall of the main building. So 2 high pillars, then take out your half pillars, add them on top, and from there we can actually start adding in our roof. We'll use some ramps for this. So we want to take out the ramps. If it doesn't let you snap like this right away, you can place like a temporary quarter wall or full wall, so you can snap against that. We want to make sure that we have our roofs coming all the way across and go up by 3 ramps in total. So not all the way back to the wall that we've placed there. So we want to start just by filling in this roof all the way and trying not to misplace too many of them. And then as a little nice detail along the side, of course, we want to make sure that we have this little quarter on the edge, so it just sticks out by a little bit but not too much. And we'll do the same here on the front, so that again we have something sticking out here, a little overhang, without taking up too much space and staying nice and high, so you can have a bunch of creatures still fit under here. We want to take out a wooden or stone stairs, and we have them across the front here, so you can easily walk up to your stables. Here at the side you could have a slope wall if the terrain allows you to place it. And then we can, of course, work on some dividers for these stables. So first of all, we want to start with some quarter walls just around the side here. And then we'll do the same for all of these different stable sections. So first of all, we'll have a layer of our little quarter walls, and we'll just keep doing that for these sections. The final one, of course, we don't need to do, because again, that's going to be the wall of the building. We can then take out our railings, and we can build this nice divider just like this, and the same here at the final one. Then taking out our wooden ceilings, we can actually place them here against the wall that we've placed to create a bit of a balcony, but also to make sure that this is actually now fully connected to the building. We can still take out our railings, and underneath we can add some details if you want to. If you're short on structures, this is definitely one you could save out on. But yeah, it just adds a little bit more character and detail to the build if you have these going across from the pillars into the buildings, making them look like proper support. And if you really wanted to, you could add them here against these half pillars at the bottom, so they have some supports here at the front as well. You want to make sure you get the right snap point, this one, so it nicely matches up with those parts. And there you go, we already have a nice looking stable out here. Next up is this little addition here in the front. We actually have 2 of those, one over here, and all the way at the back we have the same one over there. So for now, what we want to do is we want to start with some wooden pillars here. So 2 of them going up here on the corners, just like this. And then what we want to do is bring out some of these quarter walls and stone quarter walls across the bottom of this entire section. Then we can take out the stone pillars, have them underneath our wooden pillars as extra supports. We can then take out our beams and have them going across the bottom here of the foundations, again as extra supports. And then what we want to do, at least for the time being, we want to have a little half pillar on those corners, so that we can also add in these beams going across the top of the wooden or the stone wall. We should be able to take out the half pillars afterwards, just so that we have a little bit of a reinforced start to this building. Then we want to take out our full walls. We can have one layer here at the top. I like to flip them around so that we have this on the outside here. We want to do that for both of these sections. We can then also, of course, have some quarter walls underneath it to fill in that section. Here we want to start making a little shape, so we actually are going to go around like this so that we create a window shape. And then here at the front, to finish up this shape, we want to just add the slope walls so that we get a little bit of the roof shape in there. Then here in the middle, we actually want to have a full wall. We'll have the full wall surrounded by pillars and beams so that we have a nicely supported window here. And then we're going to actually use the frontier skin. We can use them here on these pillars. We can actually also use them on the pillars on the side, and you probably at least want to use them on these pillars as well. I would personally do it, but for the main reason we want it is of course to get the window in there, which looks really good. And then we can add a little bit of a detail in the front here with having some quarter ceilings here and then being supported by some ramps underneath, just to make the window a little bit more interesting. We can then also of course take out our roofs, and we can add them here on the top so that we have that section done. We then want to take out our quarter roof so that we can have it stick out a little bit more on the front, and then at the sides here we still want to add in some ramps just to make that look a little bit nicer. And again, the roof personally I would also change to the frontier skin. I think that looks a lot nicer. And then we can have a nice beam going across the top here, giving some support. And if you want to add even more detail to it, you could even add a piece of scaffolding there just to make that look even nicer. So it's already a really cozy little window for this part of the building. Now that we have the scaffoldings anyway, we can also add them here, and then one in the middle there, one in the middle over here, and one in the middle over there, so that this walkway that is up there, the balcony, is also properly supported. Now, the same little thing that we just built, we want to build over here. So basically the exact same thing is going to happen. So first of all, we'll build our little foundation like that. Then of course we can take out our wooden pillars, go up by 2 for each of these, have the temporary pillars as well, so that we can add in the beams that we need for these different sections. There we go. Then we can add in our stone quarter walls at the bottom as a nice foundation. We'll do that of course around all the sides, and then we can take out these temporary half pillars so that we can focus on the rest of this build. So again, we want to have our walls up here. We'll have some quarter walls underneath them of course, and here at the front of course we will make a window shape once more. So we'll start by shaping it out like this, then adding our sloped walls on top, and of course having that full wall here in the middle. Then we can surround that by our beams and by our pillars so that we can make the window happen again. And once more we can also add a little bit of that detail here, so these little quarter ceilings, and then of course the little ramps underneath. We can actually also already add in these ramps here at the side for the roof. We might as well, saves us changing back and forth a bunch of time. Then the actual roof on top, and of course the little bits here in the front to create a little bit of an overhang. Then we can of course have our beam going across the top there, and again a little bit of the scaffolding there as an extra support, so that we do have a little bit of extra detail there. Up next, we'll work on the greenhouse over here at the end, because it's quite simple. We'll start by adding some beams going around the outer edge here, just to kind of give it a little bit more character. Then we can go for stone pillars. We can raise them up by 2 here on the corner, and we can have them connecting down there below. We'll have another one raising up too high over here. We'll have another one too high here and too high over there. So again, it's going to be quite simple, and personally I would also use skins to make it look even nicer. So first of all, we're just going to fill in all of these walls with our greenhouse walls so that we can get the greenhouse going and get the effectiveness going. Now for the pillars here that we can see in between the walls, I actually use the steampunk skin. You could also go for the frontier skin, and then we definitely want to use the frontier skin, or maybe a custom cosmetic if you want to go with one of those. There's quite a few with some nice textures. Cozy Cabins has a few ones that could be really nice, or even Klinger Rustic has some really nice greenhouse textures that you could definitely use, just to make those windows a little bit nicer. And then we want to have the roof, which will go up by 2 here on this side, and then of course also come down by 2 on the other side. And then we just want to take out our triangle pieces to slowly go around the corner here. Just following the shape of the building and doing the layer up here to finish that off. And personally, I would use the steampunk skin on the roof here, and then maybe change this variant so that you have the little extra window, just to make this look all a little bit nicer. That is what I have done on my version. Now, before we finish this, of course, we also want to build the actual wall here. So we'll have all large walls in those places. We can actually add one more here and one more over there. We can have some of our quarter walls right there in between, and that means we can of course build the entrance here to our greenhouse. We can have the doorway there and then just fill in the rest of the walls with stone. Now I do like to use the greenhouse door here so that you can kind of still look into the greenhouse, and of course here on the corners we want to make sure that we also add in the pillar, and we can keep the beam that kind of goes around the whole of the bottom of the building. So we want to make sure that we add those in the right places as well, and that means that this corner is already starting to take shape quite well, and we can move on to the next corner of the build. Then continuing here at the back, we want to start working on this little cabin over here. First of all, we'll have these beams going on just to connect all these different parts so that we have this entire back section done. So we have this one here, we have those, and of course here on the corner we can add a pillar again, and this pillar is going to be 4 high. We'll have the same pillar over here that will be 4 high as well. We can connect it back down, and we can actually add one here because this is going to be of course an addition to the build. And then for this little side bit, we actually want to use some wooden beams instead, because it's going to be more of like a wooden little shack built against the main structure. We can have some actual stone pillars underneath just for the actual stone foundations, but then up here we want to raise this up by 2 pillars just like so, and then we can start filling in this section. So this time we won't flip around the walls, we'll just have 4 walls to fill in the sides here, and then on top of that we want to make sure that we have some quarter walls going on here, and then we want to have some shallow slope walls connecting back up to the main structure of the building. There we go. Then here on the front, of course, we want to have some windows just to create a little bit of interest. But first of all, we'll have a pillar right there in the middle. Then we can take out all quarter walls again and make some shapes for those windows. So we'll just kind of go around like this. Same over here on the other side. Just want to make sure that we get that shape in. Remove that one. And then, of course, we can have the full walls there in the middle. And we can add in our actual windows there, and we want to make sure that we surround the windows of course by pillars and beams. And once again, all of this the wooden pillars and beams you kind of want to change to the frontier ones because they look way nicer. Now we also want to add some small details to these windows. So here at the bottom we just want to add our little supports, and then doing the same as we did for those other windows, having some small ramps underneath it. Nothing above there, but we do want to have a little bit of an overhang of course, so we can already add these little quarter ramps on the outside, and we can kind of just continue that around the outside of the building up to the main structure, so that this little shack is gonna look quite nice. And then of course finally we want to have some of these ramps on the top to finish our little wooden shack that is attached to this building, which kind of fills up a lot of this wall in a nice way, making sure that it's a little bit more interesting rather than a flat wall. We want to add 4 of these stone walls over here. We'll do the exact same over on the other side, and then we can bring out our quarter stone walls. We can make a nice shape here once again, and this is going to be another window, so we'll have that shape over here, and then the same shape right over here on this side, making sure that we have 2 windows to get some light into that main part of the building. Then in between, of course, we still need to do the final layer here, so we want to have some more stone walls up there. And if you want to support it, you could of course add in some stone pillars, not all the way up, but just until where the roof of this little shack ends. And then of course in those gaps we're going to get the windows, so we want to make sure that we add those in just like this. And of course around all the windows we want to make sure that we add our beams and pillars for some additional detailing. There we go. Again, change those to the frontier skins. And to add even more details for these little roofs, what we want to do is take out our little ramps. We want to snap here to the top of this pillar, and we can then add in a small little roof just to add a little bit of extra character and detail to these windows, make them stand out just that little bit more. And we want to do the same here. And if you want to complete this all, we want to have a little half beam right there in the middle at the top, just to make those stand out a bit more, and yeah, just give them a little bit more character. And then for the rest of this, it's actually quite easy. On these corners, actually, we also want to raise up our pillars by 4. So just going to be 4 high. And then we can use a bunch of large walls here to kind of shape out the rest of the back of this building. So there we go. That already shapes up most of it. We can also already add a large wall over there. And then of course we only have this section which is still open, which is actually fairly simple to fix. We just want to have our walls in between, of course, here at the top, and then we want to have some slope walls to follow the shape of the little building that we've just made. And again, if you want to, you can actually add some pillars in here to make that look a little bit nicer. But yeah, there we go. We have the back of the building, of the bottom of the building, all done and looking quite nice and detailed. All right, then we'll start working here on the little entrance that we'll have. We'll have one large wall over here. Then right next to it, we actually want to bring out our Dino gate. So that's going to be one of our main entrances. We can take out our stairs again, add them right there in the front so you can enter it. Again, if the landscape allows it, you could have some slope walls on the side, but for now, for here, we definitely don't need those. And then we can have 2 more walls right above the entrance. We can of course have some pillars going up along the side of this entrance to reinforce it. We can also have those pillars here, and then we can also of course have the beams connecting everything up across the bottom. We also want to have the pillar in this corner to make sure we have that done. And then we actually want to add some details over here, which means we can start out with a little layer of these quarter walls. We can actually have them going all the way around like this to create a little shape for a window, which we can then add in, of course, here. And once more, we want to make sure that this window is surrounded by the beams and pillars to give it a little bit more character. And in this case, we can actually also do the little roof that we've just done for those other ones, just to add, again, a little bit more character to it, break up this wall a bit more, and just give it that nice little bit of extra light on the inside. Then for the rest of the wall is going to be fairly simple. We can just have our stone walls to fill it all in. Then right there at the top, this is actually going to be one of the entrances to the main section of the build. So not the dino pen below, but the actual main cabin. So we want to have these 2x3 ceilings to get us started. Then we'll take out our stairs and we'll have 4 of them just over here. We can then go back to our ceilings once more, have 4 of them over here, but actually we'll continue this. So another 4 right over there. And this is where, once again, we bring out our stairs. So we can have the staircase coming down here and of course all the way into the ground. So that is basically the shape of the stairs. Again, if it allows you, you can have a slope wall there, but at least, of course, we're going to want to have them here along the staircase going down into the build. Then we'll have some pillars here on the corner to support it, some more on that corner. Then around this corner, we also want to add them over here, so extra support, and we want to add one over there. And of course, what we can also do is connect the beams going across the bottom here, just as far as it takes us. There we go. And then we actually want to have those beams here along the side of this walkway too. So right over here, we're going to add some more of those beams in. But we're actually also going to add in a wooden railing. So snapped to these ceilings, we'll add them in. Of course, we'll have them along the side of the stairs and all the way back down this whole part. So all the way down, and probably won't let you there, so I would leave them out over here. Then we can take out some wooden half pillars, and we can have one over here. We can have one over there on the corner, just to give a little bit more character to this whole walkway. And then, of course, that also means we can have a full stone pillar underneath that one. And then the rest of this section, of course, is fairly easy. We just want to fill in all of these sides of the staircase with our walls so that that is all covered up. Then we also want to do a little bit of shaping here on the inside. First of all, we're going to add another Dino gate right over here so that we basically keep that corridor going. And we can have some slope walls right underneath this section to basically make a little bit of an entrance going in to the rest of the building. We can take out our stone pillars, and we can have one over here going up by 4 in total, which of course is going to line up with the main size of the build. And we can actually have a few pillars here just to kind of mimic the same thing as we have on the entrance and make that all look a little bit nicer on the inside here as well. We can also have one pillar going on that corner, because of course that's the corner for that part of the building, which also means we can have a few things that we can fill in right over here. We want to fill in these walls, and then for the rest of them we can just use some large walls going up all the way, so we can fill that section of the build in, which also means that this staircase is now really going up to the build and there's not a bunch of floating gaps everywhere. And for this main entrance, of course, on the outside, we also want to add in our actual gate so you can close off your dino pen when you don't want any unwanted visitors. Now, for the next phase, we want to take out a wooden beam, but first we'll need a temporary pillar right over here. Then we want to take out a wooden beam, and we can actually have 2 of them. I'm kind of running into the landscape here, but it's all right. We want to have a little bit of an extra detail going here above this entrance, so we want to have 2 ramps sticking out like this, and then of course we can have some quarter ramps to really add to all of the details. And well, you could, I guess, make this stick out more, but probably what you would actually want to do is, instead of having the full pillar, we just go for a half pillar that sticks out like that, because well, we already have enough of a roof here. We don't need to extend it much more. We can have some quarter bits there just to extend it slightly besides the entrance. And to make it all connected a bit more, you could add some scaffolding pieces around those bottoms, and then you should be able to remove this stone pillar without it all crumbling down. And yeah, you have an entrance that looks a little bit more interesting this way, a little less flat this wall. Now, alternatively, you could have a little parking spot here for some of your gathering tames if you wanted to. That's what I did on my build. What I did is kind of just build a little bit of a ramped roof here coming off the building. It's only really useful for like an Anki or a Doed. Nothing really too big would be able to fit underneath, but it's just a nice little way to break this up, but definitely optional, because I mean, it's also a bit dangerous, of course, to leave something out there underneath it. But yeah, could add a little bit of extra detail if you wanted. So the foundations of the log cabin are starting to form. We're almost there, but we still have some parts to go. So first of all, we can actually continue going around with our stone beams, and then we can also bring out our stone pillars, bring them up by 4 over here, and we'll do the same on this corner. Bring this one up to 4 just to get it all going. We can take out all large walls. We can have one here, one here, one here, one over there, one over here, and one over here and over there as well. We can actually add an additional pillar there just to kind of support that. And we also want to have pillars going along the sides of these walls. Now, to fill in the last section of this one is fairly easy, of course. We want to have some walls here at the top and then have some slope walls underneath it so that we kind of follow the shape that we have. We also want to build this wall. We can, well, just have normal walls there and then just have a little bit of a door down below. Bring out the actual door, fill it in so that you can reach your stables right from inside of the dino pen, you know, so you don't have to walk all the way around everywhere. We also want to have a large wall over there, and then we can have one more over here because we're only building something special there in that section. First of all, though, we're going to have some quarter walls here to surround another window that we'll have right over there overlooking the staircase and giving some extra light here on the inside of our build. So again, we're going to have the beams and the pillars around it, of course, to make a nice window there. And then we're also going to add a window over here. So once again, same kind of trick, surround the window, have a window in there, and have the pillars and the beams going around the sides, filling that all in. And that also just means that we can have some normal walls underneath this section to finish that. And then of course we have some additional details that we can add here on the outside. So we want to take out all quarter ramps, and then we can add these little bits around these windows just to make them a bit more interesting. Now, I wouldn't add anything here because, of course, you have the stairs. You could add it here if you wanted to, but again, not necessarily needed. And just speaking of it, of course, you could also add some of these little details underneath any of these windows if you want to add those. And with that, the whole foundation layer or the dino pen layer should now be completed. So we now have the enclosed space, which means that this is all you can use for some dinos, some breedings, but also the tech replicator or the industrial forge and stuff. They can easily fit in this layer without any issues. Okay, so next up, to make it a little bit easier for yourselves, we're also going to make the staircase that is on the inside of our building. We'll start right over here on this corner. So we'll have 4 stairs going all the way up to the top. And if you want to make this a little bit less awkward, because of course we have this little gap now here, we can actually add a little bit of like more structure to it. So either you can just, you know, have a little pillar coming down, and probably what you want is to create some kind of arches here as well. So what you could do is have some full walls here, and then either have the full slope walls or the shallow slope walls, just to create a little bit more shape to it and have this little side section of the build pretty much. And of course, along the side of the staircase, we'll have some railings going all the way up. And it also means that we can now start adding in the entire bit of ceilings here, so that we can actually have this entire layer filled in, which is of course where we start building, well, the actual log cabin. Now that we have the dino pen foundations done, we got the greenhouse, the stables, the nice staircase, and all the little details, we can get started on the actual main bit of the building. So we'll just start by going around and adding all of these ceilings in place for the main part of the building. There we go, all of those over here, but of course also here across the side. There we go, just getting this whole layer done. So now we can easily go up and down with this stairs. Of course, we also have the staircase on the outside, and we can of course add in some safety measures here so that you don't keep falling down the stairs the wrong way. Alright, we'll actually start around the balcony over here. We want to start right on this corner by going up by 2. Then we'll have a gap of 2, and we'll have another pillar going up by 2. Then we'll have a gap of 3, and we'll have a pillar going up by 3 in total over there. We can then go to our half pillars and place some half pillars right in front of those actual pillars that we have. That will be for the balcony, and on top of those we want to have some thin pillars. We can also make sure, of course, to add in railings around the balcony so you don't fall off when you visit it. And there we go, we have a bit of the structure in place. Now we're gonna start focusing on adding some little details here and there. over here, what we want to do is we want to add in a window. We'll flip these around, and of course we'll build a nice little shape for the window, just like this. Have the full wall in there, change that to the window, and then do what we've done many times, just circle around it with some pillars and beams to create that first window. Now this section is a little bit bigger, of course, so what we'll do first is have these walls going up. Then of course we can have this connecting, switch to the other variant to connect the top, and in the middle of course can once again be a window, and we'll have once again some pillars and beams going up around it. We should be able to take out our ramps and have a little roof here across the top of the balcony, almost all the way to the corner, but the actual corner we want to use an actual corner piece, so we want to have these two right over there. And then here at the very end we can even go into some quarter ramps, just so we have a little bit of an overhang going on there. But then of course on top of that is where we can have the actual roof going up by 3, and we can just fill this in all the way across. So no extra details that we're going to add in this section of the roof, because we're going to have plenty everywhere else. And we of course also want to have a quarter overhang over here, which also means we can take out the beams going across the top here and having it stick out just that by 1 at the end, and have the scaffolding underneath it for an additional detail. And if we want to add just that extra bit of detail, since we can actually also still have our ramps going across the top of these roofs here. So yeah, we can even add extra detail here if you want to absolutely make sure that you get a stunning log cabin. We can have 2 of those right above those entrances there, or windows. But speaking of entrances, we're going to build the entrance right over here. So we'll have some quarter walls on both of those. We want to make sure, of course, they are flipped around. There we are. And then we can add a nice double door in between, which is going to be all the way onto the balcony. And then, of course, above that, we just want to go back to our normal walls. So we want to have 2 of those over there. And we can actually fill up the next layer as well, because this is going to be a little bit higher than this section of the building. Again, there's going to be lots of layers and lots of cool little details everywhere. So we'll continue on the next section over here. We can of course also add in a pillar over there. We can add a pillar over here and a pillar at the very end over there as well. We can then actually also add in a beam there. We don't have to do that here just because it's connected to the balcony right away. We can, however, start working on these walls. First of all, we'll start filling in this wall all the way. We can continue this all the way over to the other side, fill this all the way in, and create a nice little divider, because we're going to have some separate rooms up here too, so that you can actually divide your base into different sections. So yeah, we want to just build a little doorway there. You could add a double doorway, kind of depends on what you prefer to get into this room, and I guess depends on what you're going to use that room for, whether it's for a tribe mate or, you know, you're going to have a lot of different purpose for that place. Over here, however, we do want to add a little bit of a nice window, so we'll start out by going around again with our little quarter walls, just in the same window shape we should be familiar with by now. And then of course we can add the window in, make sure we have our beams and pillars going around it, and then of course we have the final layer of that roof as well. We definitely want to add a few details around this window, so we are going to go up and down with these little quarter ramps to add in those little extra bits. And then we want to also have the little half beam on top of it, and I probably even go for this little detail here at the very least. I mean, you can of course pick and choose which windows you want to add that, but it's not on the way here. So yeah, definitely have it over there. Means we can also start checking out what the roof is going to be like. So at least for these ones, we just want to place down the roofs, not the middle ones just yet. And then here on the side, we want to have 2 ramps here, and 2 ramps over there. Then we'll actually have the ramp corner here and the ramp corner over there, because of course we're going to have to fit in whatever roof is going on here. We can actually also take out the roof corners to make sure that we turn this, because this is going to connect to the roof for this part of the building. And then of course here over at the side we can do a little bit of the overhang already, so we can actually bring up this part of the roof all the way to where it's going to be at the top, I suppose. And then of course down here we also want to have the little ramps that are sticking out over the edge. We can do the same here, and of course we can also have these parts of the roof already in place to kind of give us the shape of what is going to be the final roof, or the final section of this build. And in this section of the roof, we are going to add some additional details. So first of all, we're going to start by adding in these slope walls. We can change them to the frontier windows to create some nice little windows here in this roof section, which is why we waited with filling it all in, because now we can start going around the section with these beautiful windows to make it all a little bit more interesting. So we want to fill this in like so. And then, of course, we can have these roof corners to connect to those little window sections. We want to then go and get our quarter roofs and just fill in a little bit of an overhang in front of these windows just to make it a bit more interesting. And, of course, we can take out our wooden beams then to have them stick out. And we can also do that on the top of this roof section, so from one side all the way to the other. There we go, adding in a little bit of interest. You can already see how much interest it adds by having these 2 different heights to the main section of the building, just because, well, yeah, it's a bit boring if it was just one big roof going all the way. So now it's time to work on this section of the build. First of all, we can take our wooden beam and we can definitely bring that all the way around here for now, and just give us the shape of the building that we're going to make. And then actually we're going to instantly take out these middle 2, because we want to have a little bit of a balcony over here. So we'll just build a little balcony. We can have some scaffolding to support that out here, and of course have some railings going around the outside just to make that work. And to make that work, we're actually going to have some of these quarter walls, and we want to have the different variant on top, of course, so that we can have a little doorway right there in the middle, of course, so we can actually access the balcony that we've just built. There we are. And then for the rest of this building, it is going to be a 2 high build, so 2 high pillars we can have here on the corners. Then we can take out our full walls here, and we can start filling in the sides here. We won't fill in the middle just yet. We'll also fill in this part, leave a gap, fill this wall in, leave another gap, and fill that wall in. And we'll do the same thing here on the other side, so kind of dividing up these walls in different sections, because we're going to have some additional windows. So we'll want to have some of these quarter pieces going across the bottom. Change to the other variant to do the same here at the top layer, and we'll do that of course on both sides here. And we actually also want to make sure that we have a layer of these quarters going around this bottom. Change to the other variant, have them over here. Change to the first variant again and have them on top of there before we have him on the final variant, second variant again there. We can have the slope balls here and the slope balls all the way to the top. We can also make sure that we go all the way around here so that we can actually add another little window in there. So of course we'll have the beams and the pillars around it and the actual window itself, so that we have a nice view into the base. And for this one, I would definitely add the little bit of extra detail here so that we can have a little bit more of an interesting window, breaking up this front wall, making sure that it is way less flat than it would otherwise be. which is always the main purpose. That already looks quite nice for the front of this. Then, of course, you've probably already guessed it, we're also going to be adding windows to all of these side bits. So these are all going to be windows, which means, of course, we can bring out our pillars going around the sides of the windows for all of those. And we can have, of course, the beams on the bottom and the top for all of the different windows too. And we definitely want to add some nice details here, or at least I would, because that really helps with making these walls less flat. So we want to have those underneath all of the windows, and then of course adding the proper supports for those little window sills underneath, again, just to make the walls way less flat. And we can even go for this little detail above it. It's not going to be very visible, but I mean, it does add a little bit, so we can, so why not, you know. But yeah, you could definitely leave some of these out if you think it's a bit much, but in the end I think it makes just for a very nice and cozy cabin. We do not want to have the little half beam up there because it's going to interfere with the roof. And of course, if you do it on one side, you got to do it on both sides. So we'll also do it right over here and bring these around. There we go. And then the final little one down there. So now that means we can take out our ramps. We can continue from this corner and bring it all the way out over here, as you can see. And we'll also have those ramps going across over here, except for the very corner, because otherwise it's going to interfere with the thing. So again, we're going to use the corner piece over there just to make it a little bit smoother of an experience. Then we can take out our normal roofs, and we want to connect it from this corner that we already made. We can go all the way to the front and just fill in the sides of this roof. You should see it perfectly fit in. And of course, the same thing over here on the other side. Start filling in these roofs to make it fill in perfectly. There we go. Then we want to have a bit of the quarter roofs, of course, sticking out here on the front. Same thing over here on that side. Some of the quarter ramps to go into the rest of that shape. There we go. And then of course, taking out all beams to go across the top here of the roof all the way to the end. And we can even have the scaffolding bit right there to add more detail. So there we go. Already the cabin is taking more and more shape. And this angle actually already looks very close to what it's going to be eventually. So then this side, which is of course going to have its own entrance, we can actually add the 3 high pillar going up here, and then we can add in a beam going across from the one all the way to the other side over here. And first off, we'll start dividing up this wall a little bit. So we want to start with 2 walls over here and 2 walls over there. Then this leaves for a little entrance to be built here. So first variation of the quarter wall there, the second one up here, which means we can have a nice double door in the middle of the building, not the middle of this walkway, but the middle of the actual building itself. So that is lining out nicely, and of course adding in the actual door. Then we want to take out our normal walls and continue them up just like this. For the side sections, we're going to worry about making some more windows. So we're going to go around like this and place the second version or the second variant of the quarter wall in these specific spots so that we do not have any weird little gaps in our wall. So we want to just kind of circle around like this for the entire shape. There we are. And then we can of course add in the actual windows here so that we can have some nice views and some nice light coming in. We can add the beams, and we can add the pillars around the side of the building. Speaking of beams, we can at least have 2 of them over here. And then I would also add 2 of them over there just to kind of balance things out. And to make it look even nicer, you could have the half beams so that it kind of ends right where the door starts. Then here on the front, we actually want to take out a pillar and add them on top of these half pillars that we already had. And we can build a little bit of a ramped roof so that we have a nicer entrance here. So we want to bring this in to the building itself. It should line up pretty nicely. And then of course around the outside, we want to have some of these quarter ramps just to have a little bit more of an overhang as a nice additional detail. So all the way around just like this to create a really nice entrance. And then of course you could have little window sills underneath these, so you could have those sections that we've now built quite a few times already, just to add a little bit more interest to it all. And I probably wouldn't add the roof up here because, well, there's not a lot of room there and there's no room here. Technically, I suppose you could get away with it here. It's just what you want. You might make it a little bit too busy over there on the corner. And then up here, we kind of want to follow the shape of the roof, of course, up like this. And of course, well, there's going to be shape of the roof on the other side too. Once we've finished building that, for now, we can just kind of shape it up like this. So now we have both sides being equal. At the bottom, we can have a layer of quarter walls going around. We can also connect these, and then the second variant will go in the different gaps just like that, because we're just going to add a nice little additional detail here. So we'll have a full ceiling sticking out. We'll of course want to support that with scaffolding. We'll also want to support that with some actual pillars going around it, and of course having some beams going around it all. And then in the case of the back here, we probably also want to have some half pillars to kind of finish that shape completely. And then we want to have some walls nice on the side, have this one here in the middle, and then actually have some of these quarter ceilings around the side, just to give us some extra snap points, because then we can snap in some slope walls just like this to create a nice little roof shape. And we want to change all of these to a nice window, so that we get some nice window in the front here. We also of course want to add a roof to this whole thing. So first of all, we'll add the full roof right there. Should fit in all very nicely, just squeezing it in. And then of course a little quarter roofs to make it stick out a little bit more. And then we can add some beams across the top just to make it look all a little bit nicer. Again, just adding a little bit of extra interest to that wall and making sure that it is not flat whatsoever. Then it's time to get started here on the back. Now, first of all, we actually want to extend these ceilings just like this. So 2 of them here, right centered with that door, and right next to the entrance we have of the staircase. So we want to have one more railing here just to make it all make sense a bit more. And then underneath here, we can of course add some scaffolding bits to make it all supported. Then we can have some beams going across the sides of the building here, all the way, oops, not there, all the way until that corner for now. Then we can take out our pillars. Obviously, we're going to have a pillar over here going up by 3, same here, and same over there. But also right here on the front for the additional bit that we're adding to the build. We can take out our walls, and right here we can instantly fill them in. But if you want to have a little bit more color changes, whether you're going to skin it to Frontier or not, you might want to have this one look like the actual wood. And then of course these ones on this side, we're going to have some walls that we flip around again, just as we've been doing for most of this. And we're actually going to fill in this entire wall just like that. Actually, we're going to change this bit a little bit. We're going to keep the bottom section open there. So we're just going to fill in those walls instead. And then over here, we want to introduce a window. So we're going to go with some quarter walls along the bottom. Again, keeping this texture on the outside for now. Going all the way up to the top up here. And we can then actually go across the top eventually. And then, of course, we also want to fill in this. Actually, here on the other side, we also want to fill in that section. So that wall is now completed. Then here in the middle, of course, we're going to actually add in the window itself. So, right, those 2 are going to be the window, which means we can have the pillars around it. And, of course, the beams at the bottom and at the top. We then also want to take out these quarter ramps, add a little bit of a roof across the top section of that, just for some extra details. and of course the little half beam to finish that area off. So that is just a little bit of an additional building that is kind of attached to the side, just to make this wall a little bit more interesting and something we haven't done before. Then over here we're going to definitely do something we have done before, and it is build another one of those windows to kind of line up with the one we have on the other side. So again, we're going to go around with these quarters, filling in this wall, and then finally, of course, adding in the window, adding in the pillars and the beams around the window, just like so. And then, of course, we can add our little details around it too. So we can have the little windowsill support, and we can go out and add a little roof over the top of it, and we can even have the little half beam there. You could also add the windowsill here if you really wanted to, but again, you kind of want to pick and choose, probably. Maybe add them everywhere, maybe not add them everywhere. Leaves it up to you, and also, of course, depends on what your structure count is like. Then we want to take out our wooden roofs. We can at least add them right over here, but of course we can also start adding them here across the bottom parts of this roof. Bring these up to connect to the part we've already built before. Go all the way around the top and around the outside. The middle here we can fill in for sure. We're going to keep these sections open because just as on the other side, we want to build some nice windows into the roof here. And then of course we want to take out our roof corners, add them in over here, add them in over there, and of course connect these sections up to the build. We'll change these into our windows as well now, of course, and then we can take out our quarter roofs again. So first of all, we can add a little lip here along the side of the building, and of course we also want to do that here across these windows that we've just added, but also here across this little building that we've added. And of course this window is just the same. And then finally along the side of the end of the roof over here. Then we want to take out our ramps. We can actually go all the way, add 2 ramps here, add 2 ramps there. We then want to, of course, add the corner ramps here so that we can get this little corner done for this little additional section that we've built. Then we can take out little quarter ramps, add them at the final end here, final end there. And then, of course, it also means we can add them here to this ending of the roof, kind of blending that all in with each other in a very nice way. Then we only need some beams, of course, across the top section of this roof, across the top sections of those roofs, just to kind of give all the details. And finally, we can add a little scaffolding piece over there so that this section of the log cabin now has been completed, and we can move on to the next part. So for this section, we first, of course, we can start going across with the beams along the side of this all. There we go. We can take out our pillars, have them here on the corners, which of course means we can have some walls here to the side. We're just going to fill these in completely. Then here we're going to have 2 walls here on the corner. We're then, of course, going to have some of our quarter walls first along the bottom here. Then we'll switch to the second variant over there. We'll have the first variant again over here, of course. And again, the second variant on top to go all the way across. We should be able to add our slope walls in and then continue that slope wall all the way to create a nice shaped roof. We'll have a window here, of course. And then, of course, add in the pillars and the beams going around it. We definitely want to have all of the nice little details here to give some more shape to this one. So we'll have the little windowsill, but also a little roof going on top of it, just to, again, make these walls less flat. At the little half beam there. There we go. That already looks very, very nice. And then, of course, we can build the actual roof into this all. So we want to take out our roofs. We want to start by adding those in, just like so, for this section. And then we can start bringing this roof down, which should almost connect with it. So we can actually build around that section for now, fill in this section of the roof just as is, and then of course add these roof corners to connect to the top layer of the roof of this bit that sticks out on the end, which also means we can now have our pillar here on the corner. We can of course start filling in some of these walls, so just like that, and then finally fill in some slope walls there to fit the shape of the building. We're not completely done yet, of course. We want to have some ramps going across the sides here, kind of rounding out those roofs. We will do the same over here, but then we actually also want to have the corner piece there to blend in with this part of the roof. And that means, of course, we can then start to add all of these little details. So first of all, the quarter roofs to create the overhang. We want to do the same thing here on the front of this roof. Definitely not that. We just want to follow it all the way across. And then, of course, some quarter ramps to finish out these shapes and these roofs. And it's starting to look very nice indeed. We then want to take our beams, of course, across the top layer here, all the way to the outside. And we can have another scaffolding piece there to finish that roof section. And you can see that now this side already also looks really, really good. And there's loads of detail going on everywhere. Then the final, of course, is this side of the building. And then, of course, we have the final wall over here. We want to start by adding in some beams here in the middle. We want to have a half beam there and one there. Same thing on this side, because we're actually going to have two little additions to the build. So we can build out this with some quarter ceilings just over there and over here on the other side, building those out. And that means, of course, we can also build out our beams to kind of go around those shapes. There we go, making them stick out a bit. We're, of course, going to use some scaffolding. And we'll do the same thing over here, more scaffolding over there. We can have our wall right up front. We can, of course, also have our walls here at the sides. I actually would flip them around again for the different textures to make them stand out a little bit more. And we can then have our quarter ceilings across the sides here for some additional snap points. And then we want to have our slope walls going just on top like that. And again, same thing over here. We're going to turn that into a window here at the front. So that is going to be how we're going to add some details to this one. And then, of course, we'll have the pillars going up there. We'll also have those pillars here on the inside to kind of shape up this little box that we're making. And we can actually have a beam going across the top of that. Then we want to take out our quarter walls. We can, of course, have two of them here in the corner. Actually, we do want to flip these around. So we want to make sure that we have them facing the outside like that. We can also do those over here in these corners. Switch to the second variant up there. And then we can kind of just start filling in the rest of the shape of this wall. So we can go around the shapes we've just made, fill in these, and then just fill in the rest with all slope walls. So it's a pretty big wall, of course, but we do have a few details like this with these extra window rooms that we're adding to it, just to kind of change it all up and not do more of the same. We'll have some beams going across the top. Actually, we want to have two of those, of course, because then we can also have a little quarters at the front to stick out a little bit more, adding a little bit more details and interest to that. So we do have a little bit of a flat wall here, but I felt like it would be too busy and too crazy to add even more here. But you could, of course, have a nice trophy here, maybe, you know, a Rex's head or a Wyvern head or whatever, just to add a bit more interest there. But that is the outside pretty much done. We do have some gaps left still that we're going to work on as we finish the inside here. So here on the inside, we are kind of going to make another floor because we have so much room left still. So over here in this corner, we want to add another staircase. We're going to have two stairs going up. before we reach a ceiling, and then we'll have another staircase going off to the side. Of course, we want to make sure that we can add our railings around this so that we don't just fall off, and there we go. Then we actually want to fill in this entire floor, so we can just start from the corners and start adding in our ceilings all the way through. And we're gonna of course do this up to where the other roof is starting. So for this we can fill it all in. We should be able to go all the way there, and then we can connect it up to the staircase here, and then we can just fill in the rest of these sections. You could fill this in, but you're probably not going to use that space too much. We actually want to have some slope walls right over here that we can place down there, because we're going to have some fake walls along the sides. But first we'll have some actual walls here. Make sure to flip those around, of course, to follow the shape of the roof and the same textures as on the outside. And we just want to fill in this entire wall. Then we can also have a beam going across the bottom just to kind of match up with the other side. Speaking of the other side, we have built this little thing here, so we want to have some quarter stairs so that you can get up and look out of the window there. Then over here we of course want to have our railings continue, and we want to then start placing in these walls. I would use the secret doorways just because then you could technically always still add something behind it if you really wanted to, and that way, yeah, you're not losing any space, but it just looks a little bit nicer, and it's also a little bit more practical with your interior, to have some walls rather than the roofs, because you can actually place things against it. And that's all you need to do to finish out this building, or at least that room. You do want to, of course, check some of these gaps that we have over here. We want to make sure that we fill in the slope wall pieces right there, and then we should have pretty much the entire log cabin done. There's plenty of additional details, of course, that you can add on the outside with all the little window sills, but all in all, this is the log cabin. So this is the full build. As I said, I've used some more of the frontier skins. Pretty much all of the roofs I would change to the frontier skins, and all of the wooden beams and pillars. And yeah, this greenhouse, as I said, we have the nice frontier glass, we have the steampunk pillars and the steampunk roof, just as a little bit of a difference. And I even added a little railing on the top, but that's definitely optional whether you prefer that or not, and kind of only fits if you're going for this vibe. If you're going to go for a normal frontier roof or a different kind of skin, you might not want to have that little railing at all. But yeah, that's kind of all I've done. So all of the pillars are the frontier skins, the roofs are the frontier skins, and all of the ceilings, so the floors, are the frontier skins, because I like that texture a lot more. And you can see how much that changes the build already. It adds a lot more contrast to the build with the different wood types, but there's definitely some places where we can play around with that, because of course we already flipped around the walls here, so we have some different colors there. I've done that in a few spots to make a difference. Of course, we've done that here as well, and then here we've done a combination of that and then some of these frontier skins to just make it look a little bit different. Now, you can of course also see that my version is a little bit more overgrown. I personally use JVH Landscaping, which is a server-side mod, but there's definitely also a few custom cosmetics out there if you're an official, where you could still add plants that way. But also alternatively, you could use, I guess, the Bob Talltails DLC, plant pots and shovel, although I'm not sure how good that would look on top of your roofs. But yeah, that is how you get the whole build skinned. You can see we got a little stables over here. The hay bales are from the Western Deco mod. And then, yeah, we have a very cozy little spot over there. We have the entrance. Some of my creatures have, I guess, started wandering off a little bit, but this is what I've used the little parking spot for. Again, maybe not very practical in normal playthrough, but it looks very, very nice. And I've decorated with a bunch of extra barrels on the outside just to give a little bit more character to the place. Then down below, of course, we have the Dino pen. We have a little Mega Lab here. We have cryo storage there. We have a decent amount of space in here, as you can see, for different creatures. We have some of the new Evo Theries that are quite tall. You can see a replicator easily fits inside here as well. I've got some hatching spots back there. And that's pretty much all you can fit in here. We have the greenhouse with plenty of space to grow a bunch of your crops over there. And then, of course, we've got the other layers. So we also have this main door, of course, that we have with going up the stairs on the outside. There you have all the space for your crafting. You can see we can even fit in the industrial forge here quite easily. We have a little kitchen that you can fit in, some nice cozy fireplaces, plenty of storage options that you could go around. And then, of course, we have a nice second room. This one is more of just a cozy room for me, but depending on your needs, you could, of course, do different things there as well. We have a beautiful balcony, and then we, of course, still have the upper floor, which you could use as a bedroom too. So yeah, we have a decent amount of space in this base, all in all. Yeah, and I think it does look like a really cool and cozy log cabin. So if that's the vibe you're going for, this base should serve you very, very well. If you want a closer look at the whole base, I've done a whole tour video already, so you can check that out if you want to go across the base in a little lower speed, so you have the time to look around at some of the decisions that I've made. If you enjoyed this build tutorial, of course, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hope to see you again in the next video or the next stream. For now, goodbye.